Salofalava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuiki. Coming up,
it would be great if Australia could have it all, but we can't have it all.
Australia concedes to Turkey on hosting next year's UN Climate Summit. And Pasifika smoking rates have halved, but it's not all good news.
It's still twice the rate as the rest of New Zealand.
But first, polling has closed in Tonga's national general election, which is being conducted amid a massive fuel shortage in the capital. So far, 4 potential MPs are being touted as frontrunner for Prime Minister, which is decided after today by the group of newly elected MPs. Among them is Lord Whakawhanua, a noble representative for Vava'u, who also had a message for New Zealand-based Tongans currently unable to vote in their heritage nation. I spoke with our senior reporter Te Wila Fuatai in Nuku'alofa as counting got underway. Malolele Te Wila, how was polling day in the kingdom?
Malolele, Susana. Polling day has been eventful. So polls, as we're talking, are just closed. So counting is underway, which is pretty exciting. There are some results that have come in. The one that's officially come in is the Nobles election, of course, which ran for a few hours this morning from 10 till midday. And so among them, they selected 9 representatives to Parliament, and that was at the Palace office, which is just to the side of the palace, so it's quite a beautiful setting there on the waterfront.
Yeah, can you talk more about the Nobles representatives' results? Besides Lord Whakawhanua, who else has been elected?
Yes, so the Nobles representatives are basically, I suppose, like the aristocracy, but they basically hold estates in different parts of Tonga, and so they represent those estates. And the 9 representatives come from different parts, so Tongatapu, the Niua Islands, Ewa, Ha'apai, and Vava'u. Probably the most significant result that came out was that we had 2 new nobles that were elected, Lord Ve'ehala and Lord Mafu. So those were the two new representatives to Parliament. And then, of course, the other 2 significant ones, which were, we had Lord Whakawhanua and Lord Tuivakano. So those 2, Lord Whakawhanua is the Speaker. He was the Speaker of the previous Parliament, or the incumbent Speaker. Those 2 are significant because their names have been put forward as potential Prime Minister candidates.
I understand you spoke to Lord Whakawhanua. Did he confirm whether he was bidding to be Prime Minister?
Yes, I called him just as he was coming out after the vote. He didn't confirm, but he also didn't say that he wasn't interested in doing the job. Sort of what Lord Whakawhanua pointed to was the fact that the people's representatives were still being voted for. Of course, so the general population vote from 9 till 4 in the afternoon. And so what he said was he would want to wait for the outcome of that and see what that is, because, and he quite rightly, he said Parliament decides. So with the Tonga system, they've got the 17 people's representatives and then the 9 nobles representatives. Once they are confirmed between the 26th, they then vote a Prime Minister in.
And when can we expect the rest of the results to come out?
So the results, they're all counting now, and Tonga's got quite a unique system in that there's a heap of polling stations, so more than 200 across the island, and at each polling station, they actually, once the votes are in and counted, the polling officer, or the person in charge, calls out the result of that particular polling station, but of course that's not the official result for the constituency. So those results then get sent to the Electoral Commission in Nuku'alofa, which then announces them, and they're actually, the Supervisor of Elections, Peter Vuki, is hoping that they'll be able to announce tonight, which is what has happened in previous elections. I think last time, the previous election, it was around 11 p.m. at night.
I should have asked this earlier, but how was the turnout?
Well, we don't have any words on the turnout yet. It's probably too early to tell. I was down at the Electoral Commission's office just before you called, or just before we spoke, sorry, and they're basically everything is still coming in. So I did get to a couple of polling stations today, as well as the Noble's Palace vote, and that they all seemed to be sort of in action. There were lots of officers on hand, or people on hand, polling officers to help people, so that was a good sign. And definitely, they had lots of capacity for people to vote. So hoping it's a good turnout.
For the latest on the Tonga election results, head on over to our website, rnz.co.nz/Pacific. Australia has given up its bid to host COP31 in 2026. Instead, Turkey will host the United Nations climate meeting, with Australia pitching to still be in charge of the negotiations. Caleb Fotheringham has more.
Australia had campaigned for the meeting to be held in its country for 3 years. Australia's Climate Minister Chris Bowen says there's still a way to go before all the details are confirmed, but the new pitch is for him to be the COP president of negotiations and for a pre-COP to be hosted in the Pacific while the main event is in Turkey.
A model in which pre-COP is hosted in a Pacific island, and it's a pledging event for the Pacific Resilience Fund, which is so important to us, where the COP is held in Turkey, but Australia, myself, is appointed COP president for negotiations.
If successful and Mr Bowen becomes COP president of negotiations, it would allow Australia to prepare draft text and issue the overarching document of the event, while Turkey will be in charge of the operations side of the meeting.
So obviously, it would be great if Australia could have it all, but we can't have it all.
Pacific climate leaders have wanted to show the world the impact global warming has had on the region and oceans. Prior to COP30, Palau's President Seringal Whips Jr. says it was very important to have a Pacific COP.
In some countries, they only face droughts, or they may face a storm, but in the Pacific, we suffer from all of them. Sea level rise, storms, droughts, extreme heat, we get them all. Other people, they can't relate, or they think it may be unreal because they may not have those impacts.
Shiva Gondan, the head of Australia Pacific at Greenpeace, says not hosting the event is going to make the region's job harder to fight for climate justice.
When you're in the region, you can shape a lot of the direction of how the COP looks and how the negotiations happen inside the room, because you can embed it with a lot of the values that is extremely close to the Pacific way of doing things.
He says the process has failed the Pacific, with the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change not having a process to resolve the two bids without it getting messy.
And if it wasn't resolved, it would have gone to Bonn, where there wouldn't be any precedency for a year. And that means that creates a lot of issues for multilateralism. And right now, multilateralism is under threat.
Mr Gondan says there needs to be a better bid process for COP. Further details of how COP31 will work are expected to be revealed on Friday.
Samoa's opposition leader claims the Prime Minister is too sick to lead the country and should be upfront about his illness. Tuilaipa Sailele Malilenga Oi hid out after La'auli Ale Maliatua Lewatia Polataivau Schmidt returned home after a 2-month absence for medical reasons. The Prime Minister promptly banned the nation's only daily newspaper from government access following a tense confrontation outside his home. Margot Staunton has more.
La'auli barred the Samoa Observer from all ministerial press conferences on Monday, just days after returning on a private jet from New Zealand. He also stopped his cabinet ministers from talking to the newspaper following an ugly scene outside his house on Saturday. Journalists from the Observer and the BBC claim they did not enter the Prime Minister's compound, but were accused of trespassing by his security guards. Tuila Epa describes both the incident and the ban as inappropriate.
Well, it is telling the world that the present government in Samoa is hiding things that they should have disclosed. It is a government that does not recognize the rule of law.
He claims the government is covering up the true nature of La'oli's illness, including a recommendation his legs be amputated.
The rumours are that he should have both legs cut. His legs are absolutely useless, and that's what I am told.
Pacific Waves has attempted to contact the Prime Minister repeatedly for a response. In a text message, La'oli says, and I quote, "Don't worry about Tuilaipa, I have far more better duties to serve Samoa," end quote. The Prime Minister also said in a social media video message while in New Zealand that his leg was injured while campaigning for the August election and that the trip for treatment was long overdue. He said it was not something the country should be worried about. However, Tuilaipa says most Samoans know the Prime Minister is unwell.
It is well known to all Samoans, 100%, although those who support the Prime Minister prefer not to know.
And he added,
in our Constitution, when a Prime Minister is unable to run the country, that he ought to resign. That's where we are now. He is very sick.
Meanwhile, the former Prime Minister Fiame Naomi Mata'afa believes the ban was reactionary.
I think it's an unwise position to take, to have a ban. I don't think it serves the government well, or the public for that matter, and especially since the Observer is the only print media that we have.
She says the optics for the government are not good.
We are now getting comments from outside sources condemning the action taken. So I think the external scrutiny will be there for our government, and that's not a good thing.
She believes there was a definite lack of transparency while the Prime Minister was in Auckland.
First of all, to be away, and at the time to be away, and the length to be away, I would have thought there would have been a lot more onto it to ensure that the public were informed.
Fiame says the government needs to work on its media relations.
I had thought that they had a better media sense. All it really required was for a spokesperson to keep people updated. I mean, if he is unwell, he's unwell. And also, the issue on arrival. All they needed to say was that he's arrived safely, he needed to rest, and he would see the media at a designated time.
Fiame says that while she had her own skirmishes with the newspaper while Prime Minister, she never sought to ban it.
A public health professor has labelled the latest Pasifika smoking rates totally unacceptable, despite the government celebrating them. Figures released on Wednesday by the New Zealand Ministry of Health show improved outcomes in smoking, but worsening outcomes in other areas. Kaya Selby reports.
Associate Health Minister Casey Costello claims that smoking rates among Pasifika have halved over the last 6 years. Auckland University professor Sir Colin Tukuitonga says it's still unacceptably high.
It slowed down between last year and this year, 6.8 this year, 6.9 last year. In other words, it's levelled off, and hopefully that's not a sign of things to come.
Minister Costello has celebrated the figures, saying it shows the government's approach to smoking reduction has been working. Sir Colin says that the minister is ignoring the fact that smoking rates for Māori and Pasifika remain more than double that of the general population.
It's still twice the rate as the rest of New Zealand, where the Māori rate in 24-25 is 15% and Pacific is 10%. For the rest of New Zealand is 6.8.
At the same time, daily vaping rates for Pasifika are now 5 times what they were 6 years ago. Obesity among Pasifika has also increased to more than 69% in that time frame, while rates of high or very high psychological distress have risen to around 23% of the population.
That's Pacific Waves for today. Tomorrow, COP30 wraps up and we should have all the results from the Tonga election. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā, sui fua.